Hi everyone, so in this video we're going to be talking about absolute value. We open up our notes here. So first of all, what is absolute value? Well, actually, it's just the distance a number is from 0 on the number line. And one thing that's going to be really important to remember about absolute value is that because it's a distance, it's always going to be positive. If I asked you how far your home was from school, okay, you would never say -2 miles. It would always be a positive 2 miles. So even though absolute value can be applied to positive and negative numbers, absolute value itself will always be a positive number. It's just how many spaces is a number from 0. So we can kind of get a picture of this. If you look down here in this next part right here, if we want to find, let's say, the absolute value of -3. All right, so we just said the definition was the distance that number is from 0. So if we just count, we start at -3, we count spaces 1, 2, 3. It takes us 3 spaces to get to 0. So the absolute value of -3, okay, is always going to be 3. All right. If I asked you, well, is there another number that also has an absolute value of 3? Hopefully you would guess that +3 also has an absolute value from 3, of 3. Because if I count the spaces it takes to get from +3 to 0, here's 0 in the middle, it is also 3. So the absolute value of -3 is always going to be the same as the absolute value of +3. And that's because they are both 3 spaces away from what this important number in the middle is 0. Now, there is a symbol for absolute value. They won't always just write it out for you. It's these bars right here. And they're just 2 parallel bars on either side of the number, and that's all it's going to look like. And so there may be no clues except for that symbol right there, and that just means what's the absolute value of -3? And so that means -3 is 3 away from 0, so my answer is +3. And then those bars are around a +3. So again, how far is +3 from 0? Well, we counted them. It was also 3 spaces. And remember, these are both positive because it's a distance, and distance is always positive. Real important to remember. All right, so if we go over here and look at some of the characteristics of absolute value, the first one is just what we talked about just a minute ago. The symbol for absolute value looks the symbol for absolute value, you don't need that word there, uses 2 double bars, like prism bars. All right, so one trick we use sometimes to remember absolute value is that those bars, those parallel bars, I'll draw them here, look like bars in a prison, like if you were in jail and you couldn't get out. All right, and that helps us to remember absolute value because we know if you go into jail, they're not going to, you probably went into jail because you did something wrong. Well, they're not going to let you out of jail or out of prison until you are positive, until you're better. All right, now sometimes people go to jail and they were misrepresented, and so maybe they didn't do anything bad and they got thrown in jail anyway. So you can also go into jail positive, but you still have to come out positive. All right, so this is why it's going to be a little different. We're going to talk about opposites in another session, but opposites are different than absolute value. All right, so we've got the symbol for absolute value. They look like prism bars. Again, we can't emphasize this enough. Absolute value is always, 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 always positive. So again, remember what goes into prison must come out positive. Okay, so if sometimes people forget what those bars mean, if you can kind of think of the jail cell, sometimes that helps you remember. All right, so let's do a few examples down here. Again, there's nothing here to tell you absolute value. You're just going to have to recognize the symbol here. So we see these bars around 4. The question that's asking me is how far is 4 from 0? If I look back over here at my number line, if I need to count, I can, but hopefully you can see 4 is just 4 away from 0, and it's positive. It went in positive, it's still positive. All right, -11, how far would -11 be from 0? Positive 11 spaces, because it's always going to be a distance that's positive. In this third example here, now this time the absolute value, there's something going on inside the absolute value, and so it's kind of like a parentheses in that I need to take care of that first. So the first thing I'm going to do is 7 minus 4, which is 3. And then I still have that absolute value symbol I need to take care of. So the absolute value, or how far is 3 from 0, is still going to be a positive 3. In this last example, I have 2 absolute values. So I want to take care of both of those separately before I add them together. Again, I'm kind of treating these like you would parentheses in order of operations, or PEMDAS. We'll talk more about that in another session as well, but hopefully you remember that from last year. All right, so this is asking me, what is the absolute value of negative 2? So how far is negative 2 from 0? Well, it's just 2 spaces. This one, how far is 8 from 0? Well, 8 spaces. And then I still need to add these together, so now I'm going to add 2 plus 8 and get 10. All right, so to sum it all up, absolute value, the distance a number is from 0. Remember, always positive, and sometimes remembering the symbol and comparing it to prison helps you remember that's always going to be positive. All right, have a great day.